It is your prisonplanet.tv memberships that fund so much of what we do here in this operation. And then we're more than happy for the TV show after it's aired live, then be leaked out onto the web to tens of millions of people. That's our goal. Ladies and gentlemen, I just got off the phone with Dave Mustaine literally 20 seconds ago. And so I'm going to have to just give these directives here to my folks live on air. Come on in. I need to talk to you as soon as we go to break because Dave Mustaine is going to put a statement out through us. I didn't really press him to do that. He just wants to put a statement out through us. I'm sure you've seen the 500 articles. ABC, CBS, everything, New York Daily News about his comments over in Asia. He got back a couple days ago to the U.S. About the shootings could be staged by Obama, and they're taking them out of context and making a big deal out of it. So we need to get that clip, because it was you put together that radio interview, right? And, you know, the clip I didn't put out just because I didn't want to, even though it had been that big national news, I just kind of made that decision myself. If I do anything, I hold back sometimes. People think I exaggerate. Get that clip ready. And I've got to, I've been talking to Dave. He's going to send me his statement. So get Watson on the horn so that we can put his statement into a blurb and then put under it the Larry Pratt thing. Because, you know, Larry Pratt, head of the second biggest gun group in the country, who's never talked like us, said, yeah, they'd stage Fast and Furious as a false flag. They'd stage these. And you've got, you know, that's what Dave's saying is, you know, they took him on stage and kind of edited it out of context, and he just wants to be clear. In fact, we got 2 guests coming up today, and Dave's got some recording stuff that was already set, so he has to go in and do that. But then he's probably going to be on later after the show today. We'll have that for the nightly news. But right now, we just want to get this statement out. He started calling me yesterday afternoon before I got back to the office. And we weren't sure how big a deal it would be, but they're definitely freaking out about it. Most people are supporting him, though, because, hey, government does stage this stuff. And it has all the telltale signs, the reports of 4 shooters, all of it. He wasn't entirely convinced the first Batman deal, despite all the anomalies. But when he saw the clips in the news of people saying they saw multiple shooters and all the rest of it, yeah, absolutely. When they... and the second gas mask, and then people being told to shut up, and then the reports of people casing it, and then you've got white supremacists that are so infiltrated, and all the gun bills introduced right now. My point is I just need to brainstorm that now so that I didn't forget it. Just get Watson. I was calling him. Dave called me. I called him back, and I was calling Watson. He wasn't answering. He's in England. For folks just tuning in, our only crew not here at the command center now is in England, Paul Watson and Steve Watson brothers. And so I just want to codify an article about Dave Mustaine released a statement on Sikh situation, Sikh shooting, and then we'll just have. But here's the issue. I've got to give Paul Dave's email because he sent me text with his statement, but we need to make sure it's codified right because I'm getting it via text. He approves it, then we put it out. All right. I don't want to lose any time on this. So that's basically it. Thanks a lot, buddy. Okay, we got a big show lined up today as well, obviously. We've got Gerald Celente. Gerald Celente is on the broadcast, always informative, dealing with this admission of global meltdown accelerating. And I'm really excited about this. Richard Belzer has written a book dealing with government cover-ups, government shootings that were blamed on patsies. Wow, incredible. We've had this set up for 2 weeks. This is put out by our good friends over there at Skyhorse Publishing. We carry a lot of their great books. And it's available at InfoWarsShop.com. But it's dead wrong. Straight facts on the country's most controversial cover-ups. Yeah, government killed Martin Luther King, blamed it on a patsy. That all came out. Government killed RFK, blamed on a patsy. All that came out. Even the police report said that. Killed JFK, blamed on a patsy. Killed Marilyn Monroe. So funny. Normally with this much breaking news, I'd move a guest like that. But it's perfect timing. So we'll go over other past events, why we, when there's motive, when there's the telltale signs, why we look at the usual suspects who've been caught doing this stuff before. So that's all coming up. Guys, I don't seem to have any news on the Dave Mustaine thing. There's hundreds of articles. Just type in Dave Mustaine, click news, and print me a bunch of articles on that. Thank you. We have Gerald Celente on this Thursday edition, joining us in T-minus 53 minutes from now. Then we have TV host, big-time actor, and author, Richard Belzer, who's written a new book dealing with government staging mass shootings and assassinations and blaming it on their political enemies. Dead Wrong's the book by Skyhorse Publishing, forward by Jesse Ventura. Nice timing. We've had this set up for 2 weeks to have him on. As I know you've probably noticed, it's on every TV station out there that I've seen. Local radio is covering it, national radio. You name it, it's being covered. Hundreds of newspapers. Dave Mustaine was in Asia a few days ago. He's now back in California. Formerly of Metallica, of course, founder of Megadeth. And Dave Mustaine talked about the fact that he thinks Obama may have staged the shootings to get our guns and bring in a police state in Aurora and in Wisconsin. So in Colorado and there. And it's a big national story right now. Also, the writing's on the wall. They're getting ready to dump Biden right now because of his thing about black people are going to be put back in chains if Romney gets elected. So that's big news. That's coming up. But Dave and I were talking yesterday about it. Dave called me right before the show started, and he's writing up a statement, and we're going to release it at Infowars.com in the next hour or so. Also, not sure if Dave wants to release it, but we have, we did a recording as well with him basically just saying, look, if they'd stage Fast and Furious, they'd say anything. Same thing Larry Pratt said. So that's all a clarification. It is a big story. They're scared of this. If people just stop buying whatever the system says, it's over. Their little game is over. And they don't like it. And love Dave or hate Dave, I know him personally now for about 5 years. And he stayed at my house quite a few times, family, friends with him. I can tell you right now, he's the real deal. He's a real guy, and he's really starting to wake up to the full big picture of what's going on. So this is a big story, and again, he's got commitments. He's recording right now. Just dropped his daughter off at school. He is recording right now for the next 4 or 5 hours. But after the show today, we'll probably do a taping. I'm scheduled to take my children somewhere and then come back tonight. But whatever has to happen, we'll get that out for you today. And there'll be a statement coming up very, very soon here. Huge economic news, giant news on the WikiLeaks front. The attack on the Family Research Council not being called terrorism. Obama isn't making statements on somebody saying he was mad about Chick-fil-A and Christians. So he went in there and shot some people. And I guess it's a big celebration. So there you go. Of course, people with guns were able to stop him. Continuing, we're going to be looking at all of that and some big federal court rulings. Warrantless cell phone tracking is illegal, federal court rules. Now, I wanted to air this yesterday, but the show just got filled up. But we're going to air this now. This is Paul Watson's breakdown of parallels between our society and Rome. And so we're going to air this piece from InfoWars Nightly News a few nights ago, and then we're going to go to break and come back and get into all of the incredible news. I'm Alex Jones. Here is an excerpt of Paul Joseph Watson on InfoWars Nightly News, the parallels, again, between our republic turned into an empire and the same thing that happened to the Roman Empire. This is key information. Stay with us.
Rome burned, will we? And this is an article I put together with Alex Jones. As America's engineered economic implosion accelerates, the parallels with how the Roman Empire fell are staggering. America is now ruled by a gaggle of completely corrupt financial terrorists who will stop at nothing to hollow out the country in pursuit of their own maniacal and selfish gain. This precisely parallels Rome's rapacious ruling emperors and senators of the 5th century, who were so obsessed with seizing wealth and control that they ended up destroying their own culture, their own country, and the whole empire in the process. So basically this is mainly about the planned financial implosion with, of course, the so-called stress tests on the banks coming up. The banks are being told by the Federal Reserve, prepare for a collapse and the government's not going to help you. But it's also about the innumerable similarities that 21st century America shares with the Roman Empire. And it's just amazing how close they parallel, how close they match up. You know, we've got the United States with troops stationed in some 130 countries now, outstripping anything the Romans ever had in terms of occupation. But of course, sharing the same impossible task of maintaining such a sprawling empire when the US can't afford it. It's gone bankrupt, 16 trillion in debt. Meanwhile, we've got the, you know, the ruling greedy elite centralizing power and wealth, capitalizing, hijacking the very financial crisis they created to do so, just as the Roman emperors and senators did back in the empire. And also, of course, record numbers of Americans, about a third of the whole population, on some form of government welfare. Same situation in Rome. So again, we've also got the moral decline of America, you know, added to the obsession with sports and entertainment, which is directly contributing to the decay in society because people are just obsessed with entertainment, bread and circuses. They've abandoned their civic duties. They're no longer interested. Same thing happened in Rome, almost exactly the same thing. That's, of course, where the phrase bread and circuses came from. There's actually a poem or a quote in this article written by the poet Juvenal from 100 AD. He was talking about Rome at the time. And he wrote about how people had sacrificed their involvement in real affairs, you know, which directly impacted their lives and substituted them for bread and circuses. Exactly the same thing happening in America today. Just as in Rome, we've got in America a situation where an overwhelming number of illegal immigrants have flooded in and refused to assimilate to the point where they're now trying to actually claim their own territory, just as the tribes that flooded into Rome did all those centuries ago. So again, same parallel. You know, we got these La Raza movements, we got the Mexican flag being flown above the American flag in places over on the West Coast. We got race being played off against race. Exactly what happened in Rome. You can go through all the scholarly texts about how Rome collapsed, and in almost every instance in society, in the economy, in culture, America parallels Rome in every sense. It's scary. So, you know, where's it all leading? It might take a couple of 100 years. The Roman Empire lasted for, what, nearly 1,000 years, so we don't know the time frame, but what we do know is short term, all this is going to lead to riots and civil unrest, and eventually it's going to lead to the collapse of America, just as Rome collapsed 1,600 years ago. So basically, this article is about the ruling class. Are they so consumed by their avarice and lust for power that their actions could lead to the actual collapse of Western civilization? Because it's happened before in history with the Roman Empire and other empires, and there's no reason it can't happen again. So Rome burned, will we? Important article up at Infowars.com that I put together with Alex Jones. Paul Ryan sold shares on same day as private briefing of banking crisis. This is out of The Guardian. Paul Ryan, Mitt Romney's vice presidential running mate, sold stock in US banks on the same day he attended a confidential meeting where top-level officials disclosed the sector was heading for a deep crisis. The congressman on Monday denied profiting from information gleaned from the meeting on 18 September 2008, when Federal Reserve Chairman Ben Bernanke, then Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson, and others outlined their fears for the banking sector. His office said he had no control over the trades. Public records show that on the same day as the meeting, Ryan sold stock in troubled banks, including Wachovia and Citigroup, and bought shares in Goldman Sachs, Paulson's old employer, and a bank that had been disclosed to be stronger than many of its rivals. The sale was not illegal at the time. So, you know, what a surprise, yet another compromised politician who's now going to be Mitt Romney's running mate. You know, another
By the way, that is something in the financial stack we're going to be getting to. It's now well over 50% down Facebook stock as more of the insiders can, quote, legally dump their stock. But I read where some of them dumped it right away. But now they're saying they weren't allowed to dump it till now. So I'll have to research those conflicting reports, but it's down well below 50%. What a giant scam, really. Run by a guy that calls his users that trust him dumb bleepers. And a group that wants you to face scan to buy and sell and uses all the data on you. And it's hooked into the globalist. That's why not this year, not 2012, but 2011 in St. Moritz, Switzerland, our reporters, Paul Watson and Aaron Dykes, were there. And it was Facebook people and Google crawling all over it. AP reports Facebook stock plunged to a new low Thursday after the expiration of a ban that had prevented some were allowed to, investors and insiders from dumping millions of additional shares they own in the social networking leader. Firms ranging from Accel Partners to Goldman Sachs and others. Peter Thiel, he was at Bilderberg, and Reid Hoffman were among those free to sell stock they own after the lifting of a ban known as a lock-up period. That was after the, quote, trouble the first few days as they were dumping. If many of them took advantage of that, Facebook stock could decline because the market would be flooded with nearly 2/3 more shares. So it is making its race towards the toilet bowl right now. And it's all a big joke to them. It's all funny. It's all real. It's funny to them they put fluoride in your water to brain damage you. Like right here in Austin, our mayor, I've been there. He laughs at scientists, you name it. He'll laugh at Harvard studies about brain damage, cancer. It's all funny. It's just like, you don't seem to understand. We know. You don't seem to get it. We enjoy it. So sit there and die, my little minions. It's all funny how they kill us. It's all funny how they rape and rob us. It's all funny until the giant awakens. But it's not hard to see for miles and miles if you're not naive. And if you've studied history, you can see for miles and miles and miles and miles. And it's our goal to get you to where you can see for miles and miles and miles, politically, economically, spiritually. Humans only live 75 years on average. In the last 6,000 years of recorded history, there's only been 60 generations. We're starting the 61st generation right now. A little more than 60 generations in recorded history. Humans always think they're smart, especially criminals. They think they got it all figured out. They have intelligence but not wisdom. And they don't see what they create. They don't see their own megalomania. They're not humble. They think they're winning. If cancer had a consciousness, as I've said 1,000 times, it would think it was winning. It's not winning, it's destroying. As Max Kaiser said, who's joining us tomorrow, they're programmed to take it all. And when I've seen countless staged shootings, mass shootings, murders, terrorist attacks by every major government in the world in the last 100 years over and over again, from the czars to the Nazis to our government to the British government to Israel to the Arab governments, this is one of the oldest tricks in the book. And we have staged shootings of RFK and the list goes on and on. Of course we look at more modern events that have perfect timing with a bunch of anti-gun bills and UN treaties that have all the telltale signs. Of course we look at it and say, number one suspect is who's done this before. And only the naivete of the general public, not knowing from historical experience and research, only the naivete allows this to happen. You know, Dave Mustaine's being attacked all over right now, and he's happy with that. Or talking about the fact that he thinks Obama's people have a hand in staging the shootings. They're the prime suspects. Now, why is that? Well, I mean, if they've been caught shipping guns into Mexico to kill thousands, as Larry Pratt has said, they've got to be looked at for staging these when it has all the telltale signs and the timing. And the fact that this is out there is going to backfire on the establishment. They think they're going to demonize this idea. Everybody I know is going, oh, yeah, that does make sense. Because we know you're a pack of criminal liars. I didn't have to see for miles and miles and over the political horizon to know that Facebook was way overvalued, probably 10 times in its public offering, its initial public offering, to say it was a giant pump and dump scam with the whole media getting behind how great it was to sucker what they see as the idiot public. I'm going to tell you a brief story. I'm going to come back and go to news. I went yesterday, I took my son to work. I promised to take him to Barton Springs. Hadn't been there in about a year. It was like the Caribbean. Big spring-fed pool by the river. I mean, we're talking 2-foot-long bass, foot-long perch, just ultra gorgeous. I go there. I walk up, and the women are all standing there in line to pay to get in the city park, taking their time, acting weird, acting all neurotic with their kids. And I'm like, man, because this is liberals. There are a lot of good people there as well, but they're not even liberals. They call themselves liberals, just really neurotic, screwed up people that never live in the real world and are just really have problems. I'll have to go to break and finish the story. And I watched the young lady behind the counter. There's like 20 people in front of me. I'm sitting there watching. It kind of turns catty corner and I'm able to see. I'm sitting there watching, people watching, anthropology, sociology, psychology study. And I'm watching people say, thank you, when she hands them their change back. And I go up there and I said, hey, how you doing today? Doesn't say anything. Well, I'll tell you the rest of the story when we get back. But this is the future man of the globalists have their way. Mind-dead jellyfish. Monday through Friday, 12 noon to 3 p.m. Eastern. Back Sundays, 4 to 6 p.m. Nightly news, 7 o'clock Central. Streams out live to everybody. And I just learned that for a while, they've not been restreaming, and it just goes right to archive after it airs once, a lot of times live. No, we're going to keep restreaming the nightly news now for those of you that like the streams rather than waiting for a download. So that is back in effect there for people over at prisonplanet.tv. Again, I want in a few minutes to re-air this. I aired this last week. The video is up at Infowars.com and prisonplanet.com. I'm going to have one of the webmasters add Full Spectrum Evil, breaking down how the globalists manipulate countries and nations and religious groups against each other as divide and conquer. I'm going to air this again today ahead of Gerald Celente joining us. And then we're also going to have Richard Belzer on, who wrote Dead Wrong, Straight Facts on the country's most controversial cover-ups, where they staged shootings of RFK, JFK, the injection murder of Marilyn Monroe, and the shooting killing of Martin Luther King. We sell it at InfoWarsShop.com, but the movie star and TV host, TV star, will be joining us, scheduled coming up in the third hour today. Dave Mustaine is locked and loaded to tape an interview with me today because he's in recording studio right now, and he's pretty professional. He just does everything in the order he said he would. I was set to go to a meeting after 2 that I can't really miss. I don't know what we're going to do with that. Just so happens I happen to have a recording, though, of Dave saying what's all in the news right now that I never aired. I told people he said some controversial stuff, and he wanted to air it, and I said, you know what? I said, they're going to spin this against you, and even though you'll come out good on the end, I'm tired of my show being places where my friends get attacked. I learned my lesson with Charlie Sheen. Again, huge attention for this show. Instead of 1 million visitors a day on InfoWars, try 5 million for about a week. But it's my friends. And I don't want to see them have problems. I mean, I'm here to say it's an inside job. All the evidence points towards it. I mean, I'm kind of the kamikaze. But Dave's done it. You know, Dave wanted to say it, so he said it. He said it more cogently because he was on stage there and more focused on the show. So I pretty much already been given the green light to play it so he can clarify. Said it a few weeks ago, but clarified now what he said a few days ago with the tape. But I figure I might just get him on instead. So who knows? Maybe at the end of the Belzer interview. Mustaine may pop in or something. He's got a break then. But we're working on all that right now. It is a big national news story. It is in hundreds of publications right now. We have an Infowars.com article, Dave Mustaine, Obama staged Batman massacre like Fast and Furious down at the border. Well, really what he's saying is he thinks they may have, and that if you're already known for doing stuff like this, you got to be a chief suspect when you have all the telltale signs of people saying multiple shooters. We're going to be going over all of that. And then with Gerald Celente, they've said the British have said they're going to raid the Ecuadorian, that totally violates international law and common sense, that they're going to raid the embassy. Armed raid, that's an attack on a sovereign country. That's a war if they don't give up Assange, who's gotten asylum. They were just blaming the Chinese a few weeks ago. The Chinese were saying, release our political dissident out of your embassy. And then, you know, and of course, the Chinese did not dare go into the U.S. embassy. But now the Brits, the globalists, are so lawless, they're saying they're going to go after him with an armed raid. Greeks confront crime wave amid austerity. BBC, because they've taken most of the guns there. They have draconian gun control, and the public is just being fed on it. It says the police can't protect them. Oh, really? What do you think happens in New York and Chicago? By the way, they're reporting here that areas out around the world that were the most dangerous in other countries are no longer the most dangerous in the world, because Chicago is now the most dangerous in the world. So, because they have total gun ban for the citizens there as well. And we're going to get into Biden. Looks like he's out. Big stack of news on that front and what that signifies. We'll cover that after this break. But here is the video/audio presentation. Full spectrum evil. The video of your radio listener will be posted in the next 20 minutes at Infowars.com. Get this out to everybody, because if you want to understand why the bankers are funding Al-Qaeda, you need to see this video and hear this audio. Here it is. Alex Jones here to cover a topic, an issue that is one of the most important I've ever discussed. This information is very closely held by governments and elite corporations. They do not want you understanding this. Now, many of you that are already aware of this, it'll seem simple, but large swaths of the global population have no idea the real geopolitical paradigm that we're living in today. Today, we will look at the real forces, the real players in the battle for 21st century global hegemony. I'm going to break down who really rules the world, how they control the planet, and how they are trying to usher in a world war that is really pointed at the general population. To begin my illustration, I have 3 different board games here. Chess, the classic game of Risk, as well as Monopoly. And we're going to look at these systems of stylized warfare. And between these 3 systems, we find the truth of the system that we're living under. How do we know that system? Well, books written by people like Carol Quigley at Georgetown, Bill Clinton's mentor. They think we're stupid, and so we have their own documents. To begin with, I'm going to use a Lego chess set as an illustration to break down primitive forms of government, warfare, and domination. If you look at this set, you notice there are 2 sides. There is the red and there is the green, or there is the black, there is the white. From the beginnings of civilization more than 6,000 years ago until about 1700, this was the model of warfare between nations. There were occasional alliances, but by and large, warfare and politics was carried out in a very 2-dimensional way, like a chess set. You have the ruling class, the royalty, the priest class, the military elite, the generals, and in front of them you have basically their conscripts, or the lower class fighters, who can also represent just the general population. And these 2 groups are engaged in warfare and base domination against each other to control larger areas of land and the vassal populations living in serfdom upon it. One area that we see from the ancient chess model that is still used in statecraft by the globalist is the fact that sometimes wars were launched, in the case of the French and the British, against each other when they had rebellions at home. they soon learned it was a way to turn inner anger at the state against a foreign state and to reduce the population of young males that you didn't have jobs for. The two-sided fight is a bygone era. In truth, for more than 300 years, the globalists have been financing multiple sides of wars, knowing that conflict destroys nations and gets countries deep into debt. And that is the key. They're financing both sides. And we see this being pioneered by people like the Rothschilds, starting in the 17 and 1800s, where they would finance sometimes 3 or 4 different factions, and it didn't matter who won because all of them were in debt to them and had societies that were wrecked after the wars. Next, let's look at the game of Risk. These are primitive attempts to distill down human conflict and domination into a game you can play in a few hours. The militaries all have basically equal resources, equal numbers of troops, and to enter into the equation some type of random probability, we have dice and we have cards. There is no discussion here on looking at the real model that we are under today. We're going to come back to Risk here in a moment, but first let's move to the game of Monopoly. In the game of Monopoly, you have different economic groups, or 4 players, that attempt to engage in economic warfare against each other and then be able to create a monopoly or a single entity that is in control of New York City. To understand the real system we're under, it's important to combine Monopoly and Risk with an overlay of strategy from chess. And this is a key part of the real system we live under today. The founder of the Rockefeller dynasty famously said that competition was a sin, and they wanted big governments that they financed and control to be able to shut down their competition and pick winners and losers. This is the essence of monopoly capitalism, the opposite of free market, and is simply a form of fascism, what Mussolini called corporatism. So out of these 3 board games, Monopoly best describes our modern system. But it itself is only 2-dimensional. You see, the private Federal Reserve that's owned by 6 private banks, Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, Bank of America, and others, they always win. You're playing their game. You think you're battling it out for houses and apartments and for Park Place and for the electric company and for the railroad and for the top hat and for the fashion show. But it's the bankers that control the politicians. They've got the get-out-of-jail-free card. And they've got control of the money. The Treasury works for them. So the bank always wins. But what happens if a country won't sell? What happens if an African nation won't play the monopoly game? Or what happens if a Middle Eastern country doesn't want to be part of the modern bankster system based in London and New York? Well, then that's where Risk comes in. Because they want to be able to take you over through economic espionage, as John Perkins has written in his bestseller, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. But if they can't, this is in all the official CIA and State Department documents, they will then come and finance your neighbor to attack you. So Libya's not playing ball. It's building up and industrializing all of Africa. You want a global monopoly. You just play countries off against each other. You're a globalist. You've made yourselves exempt with diplomatic immunity at the United Nations. Who set that up? The robber barons. What do? You just have Al-Qaeda come out of Egypt into Libya, ethnically cleanse, blow up most of the infrastructure, knock out Gaddafi, and now they have to come to you and borrow money out of your bank to rebuild, and you own and control everything. And guess what? If you want to get that welfare check, well, you got to take the vaccines, which, by the way, sterilize you. So they're using the strategy of chess, but they're employing it through a monopolistic system where they have a monopoly on the issuance of currency and credit, and they also have the biggest militaries on earth from the United States and Europe, controlled and dominated 100% by them. They've announced that we're totally their slaves, and they have such disdain for us, they use our supposed enemy Al-Qaeda against the Russians, against the Serbs, and now against other Middle Eastern nations. while simultaneously telling us we need military-style occupation within our countries by the TSA and the military to keep us safe from Al-Qaeda, who they sponsored and created. And remember, the banksters are openly crowing and bragging that they have conquered you through monopoly capitalism.
The question is, do we all work for central bankers? That's what I want to address to our guest tonight. Is this global governance at last? Is it one world, the central bankers in charge? Aren't we all just living and dying for what the central banks do?
To answer your question, we are absolutely slaves to central banks.
And they weren't able to do this because they had better products. They were able to do it because they created, through fractional reserve banking here in the U.S. and similar systems worldwide, unlimited free credit for themselves, which they then loan out to you at interest. But that wasn't enough of a fraud for them. In the last 20 years, they've deployed derivatives, completely made up counterfeit instruments to the tune of more than 1.5 quadrillion. That's 1,500 trillion. With that counterfeit money, they were able to buy up all of their competition, pay off the governments, and dominate defense industries as well as media to carry out their propaganda. And herein lies the big secret that they don't want you to know. The big secret hiding in plain view. We think about nations and continents and cultures. But in truth, the globalists, the bankers who have unlimited money, they're waging war against anyone else that has any assets because they want everyone to be impoverished, so you have to go to them and so that you have to follow all of their orders so they can control human development and society. In the past, they would brag about their real political system in fictional accounts, in movies like Network. Oh, there are no more peoples. There are no more nations, Mr. Beale. Each one of us has one piece of stock in the global system, one ecumenical giant global government. Except one thing, that big global corporate system they've been selling us on doesn't want us to even be alive. It's designed to consolidate control and then slowly cut off the resources while the banksters themselves pose as the saviors, selling people on getting deeper into the tyranny, and the pain will stop. When at the end of the tunnel is nothing but global extermination and eugenics so that these selfish, greedy scam artists can have the world and all of the incredible technology and life extension for themselves. And that's the big secret here. You have been warned. I'm Alex Jones signing off for Infowars.com. The ball is in your court. The rest is up to you. Please get this presentation out to everyone you know. We've got to understand the enemy we're facing if we have any chance of defeating these people. Humanity hangs in the balance.
Police Chief Dan Oates issues this immediate public statement claiming there is just one shooter.
Every single indicator is that this is all Mr. Holmes's activity and that he wasn't particularly aided by anyone else.
This is the same police chief that presided over a blatant violation of the Fourth Amendment by illegally cuffing and detaining 40 innocent people, including women and children, for over 2 hours while looking for a bank robber. Early on, the police scanner supports the one-shooter theory.
16 Adam, I need a marked car behind the theater, Sable side. Got a suspect in a gas mask.
209, okay, and we need cars south side, suspect in a gas mask.
The mainstream media promotes the one-shooter theory.
And honestly, for the record, there was only one guy. Yes, actually, the shooting probably lasted probably for about a minute or two.
But according to the police scanner, another suspect is spotted just 3 minutes later.
321, one of the shooters might be wearing a white and blue plaid shirt.
Copy, outstanding, shooter possibly wearing a white and blue plaid shirt.
He had his foot propped open by the door, and from the crack, it looked like he was signaling somebody or looking for somebody to come his way.
From what we saw, he wasn't alone. He had someone with him because the second can of tear gas didn't come from his side. He was completely dressed in black, head to toe. From what we saw, it seemed like he had something over his face, probably to prevent him from breathing it in. And we can only assume that someone got him in because he was... whatever he was wearing seemed thick, so I don't think he would really, I think he'd stand out in the crowd.
The one-shooter theory loses even more credibility when a second gas mask is discovered. How is it possible that 12 people were killed and 58 were injured by a semi-automatic weapon that jammed?
He shot easily like 60 or 70 rounds.
Then there's the official story given by the president himself concerning the blood path behind the theater. Obama claims that this wound spilled what appears to be buckets of blood. In the aftermath, the vulture media swoops in, misquoting Holmes' mother regarding the shooting, causing her to issue this statement.
I did not know anything about a shooting in Aurora at that time. He asked if I was Arlene Holmes and if my son was James Holmes, who lives in Aurora, Colorado. I answered, yes, you have the right person.
Holmes' father worked for San Diego-based HNC Software Incorporated, a company that worked with DARPA to develop cortronic neural networks. These enable machines to translate oral and visual stimuli and simulate human thinking. And Holmes' grandfather had deep ties into the intelligence framework of the U.S. military. The children of people with similar backgrounds are highly susceptible to exposure to monarch mind control. Using brainwashed patsies in PSYOP massacres has become a commonplace thread in American history as the shadow government strengthens its stranglehold on public perception.
Instead of really digging into why this apartment would be rigged to kill, but then Holmes would then warn police and then lawyer up and not say anything else, where he got the funding and the firearms training, and these eyewitness reports that there was more than one person, instead of asking those questions, national media want to focus all their attention on why guns were legal in the first place.
Now is the time to shine a light on the obvious motive behind this tragic event, the motive to pass the United Nations Treaty on Small Arms. John Bound, InfoWars Nightly News.
Get the guards, disarm him immediately. Whereas one of the slaves has a weapon, raise the alarm. Friends, do you know one of the key hallmarks of a hardcore police state, whether it was Soviet Russia or Nazi Germany? Governments would take political dissidents' passports away. In the United States, that's only done if you've been charged with espionage or if you're out on bail for a serious crime. The IRS has written a law that's passed the Senate and is now in the House, and Forbes and other publications are reporting on it like it's no big deal. Hey, if the IRS says you owe back taxes, you're not going to be allowed to travel outside the country. They're going to take your passport. How many times have I told you this was coming? This is exactly what the IMF and World Bank, the consortium for the international arm of the private Federal Reserve, have called for more than 15 years. A global cashless society. Already many jobs, you've got to get TSA approval and authorization to have them. I saw Homeland Security 9 years ago on C-SPAN say, you're not going to get on a plane if you haven't paid your taxes. You're not going to get a driver's license. You're not going to be allowed to work. This is total enslavement. This is beyond anything we've seen in history. It is incredibly illegal. Travel is a right, not a privilege. A passport is a right as a citizen. This represents withdrawing and revoking your citizenship. That's what it is under another name. They tried to pass a bill last year for any reason the president wishes outside of a court to take your citizenship away, and then they say they can secretly arrest you or kill you. When he couldn't get that passed, he just signed the NDAA and said he can secretly arrest you or kill you. Well, a law that's unconstitutional is null and void. Marbury versus Madison. What this represents is capital controls. When governments start to collapse throughout history, they always try to clamp down on people leaving the country with money. Bottom line, the IRS is the collection agency for the private Federal Reserve. Pre-1913, dollars that were fiat were backed partially by silver and gold and said United States note on them. After 1913, they said Federal Reserve note. In 63, Kennedy reissued $5 bills that said United States note on them. And he signed an executive order to begin the abolishment of the private Federal Reserve and its collection agency of the IRS. That's why the banksters killed him. My point is, yes, a country has to have taxes, but these aren't taxes. These are levies to private international banks. Just as Europe admits they're now under Goldman Sachs dictatorship. Not through money they owe. Goldman Sachs got their governments to sign on to the derivative fraud they created. This is so incredible. And now the banksters are saying, if you don't pay all the taxes we want directly into our private coffers of the Federal Reserve, outside of a court, outside of a conviction, outside of law, we're going to put you on a no-fly list. Just like Rahm Emanuel, former chief of staff at the White House, said at a gun grabber meeting. He said, look, if you're on a no-fly list, over 2 million Americans are on that, by the way, you're not going to be able to buy a gun.
That is, if you are on the no-fly list because you are known as maybe a possible terrorist, you cannot buy a handgun in America.
One of the things you don't know about is the number of people that we have turned away because their name has been on the watch list or on the no-fly list.
Only my mom could, but not me and my dad, because both me and my dad are on the watch list.
Now they say they want to expand that to where if you haven't paid your taxes, you can't buy a gun. Of course, these are taxes to the IRS, and they just say you haven't paid. The bankers are taking control of our lives. They are squeezing Europeans with the exact same system. This is hardcore fascism. This is incredible tyranny, and we've got to defeat this legislation that is now in the House. Get these articles and get them out to everybody and demand that the corporate whore dinosaur media cover this, because these are internal checkpoints, internal passports, and they're saying they're going to revoke your citizenship. That's what this does. Extrajudicially. This is off the Richter scale when it comes to despotic, oppressive tyranny. The Federal Reserve is engaged in a total coup d'etat over due process and threatening to revoke our citizenship and pull our passports if we don't fully submit to the bankers. The bankers are pressuring local governments to raise the local property tax that we didn't have till 60 years ago in this country, that turns your property into basically a government rental. This is going to be an incredibly jam-packed next 2 hours. You've already heard the first hour of the worldwide broadcast going on over 115 AM and FM affiliates, global shortwave WWCR and XM channel 166. So that's what's being broadcast and transmitted. Streaming, you can listen at Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com on this Thursday, August 16th, 2012 edition. There are thousands of articles, thousands. NBC News, you name it. Megadeaths, Dave Mustaine says Obama is behind deadly shootings. And my name's been brought into this because he talked about the fact that he thinks the president's a criminal and a liar a few weeks ago on the show. I just interviewed Dave Mustaine. That's why we aired a few of our special reports the last 15 minutes. I just went over to the TV side and did the interview with Dave. And it's a video interview. He's on the phone. It's video. We're transferring it over. It's about 5 minutes long. We will air it here on the radio probably right before we go to movie star and TV star and researcher Richard Belzer, who has written Dead Wrong, Straight Facts on the country's most controversial cover-ups about government shooting people and staging it and blaming patsies. Isn't that funny? We had this guest set up 2 weeks ago. Jesse Ventura wrote the foreword. Here's the deal. Operation Northwoods calls for shooting people in movie theaters and on the streets and blaming political enemies. Operation Gladio, hundreds of bombings and shootings in Europe carried out by NATO, partially declassified. The Italian government completely declassified it, blowing up school buses, shooting people, bombing theaters, shooting up churches, shooting up police stations to blame their political enemies, whether they be left or right wing. If the groups weren't controlled by the globalists, didn't want the bankers to take over like they've done now, you get a bombing or a shooting. Dave Mustaine has come out and said, hey, if they'd stage Fast and Furious, they'd stage this. We got to look at it. Said at a concert overseas. And we've been talking on the phone lately about this, the Sikhs president saying he saw multiple, people casing it, witnesses all saying 4 shooters. That's what was reported. We need to look at this. We'd be idiots if we didn't. It's time to stop trusting the system. Now, I'll tell you, this is breaking. Just like with the Dixie chicks saying they didn't agree with the war. They're trying to cancel his tours. They're trying to persecute Dave Mustaine right now. Like Chick-fil-A, even if you don't agree with what Chick-fil-A did, you've got to support the First Amendment with these bullies. Guy went in and shot up the Family Research Group, the Family Research Council yesterday with a bunch of Chick-fil-A stuff saying he was mad at them. Okay, these are terrorists. You've got to support the First Amendment. And we will have that exclusive Dave Mustaine statement coming up. Quite frankly, he said stuff after the Batman shooting in an interview we taped after the show one day, and I didn't even air it because I didn't want this big controversy, even though I knew in the end he'd come out smelling like a rose. I just don't like my friends having this stuff happen to them on my show. It's happened a lot of times. But they're going to come after him, folks. They're going to come after him. They didn't go after Larry Pratt because he's a Fox News contributor. That doesn't fit into their whole game plan. They think he's a good target. And now we're going to talk about the economy, the accelerating world events with the premier trends forecaster joining us via video Skype right now. He is Gerald Celente for the balance of the hour. And there's so much I want to get into. I mean, there is so much that I want to break down. They look like they're about to dump Biden right now. That's the writing on the wall. We'll get his take on that. We have got just amazing stuff. Federal courts ruling that cell phone tracking is legal, just throwing out the Fourth Amendment. They're saying they're going to raid the Uruguayan. They're saying the Ecuadorian, excuse me, the Ecuador, teleprompter free, folks. The embassy, which is just incredibly illegal because they're going to try to give him political asylum. Just amazing the type of evil we're seeing. Ecuador grants asylum to WikiLeaks Assange. All of that and all the big articles. In fact, I left it in the studio from last night. Will you guys bring me all the financial crash stuff? You've been called a pessimist porn dealer, Gerald Celente of the Trends Journal, for predicting with precision everything that's happening, the wars, the Tea Party years before it came, the attacks on small businesses, the rebellion, the meltdown of derivatives, that we were really in a depression and never left the recession. All of that confirmed. They're saying, get the banks ready for collapse. The elites are all buying gold up. That was in the news. Soros, the rest of them. Literally everything you've said. But you don't get praised by the corporate prostitutes, you invented that word, for telling the truth. You get even more demonized as it all unfolds. So you've told us what's coming. Tell us, and it's come true, tell us what's coming now, Gerald Celente.
What's coming now, unfortunately, looks like our worst scenario forecast that we've made recently. And that's the first great war of the 21st century. And people refuse to put the pieces together. Whether it's what's going on in Syria is very clear. This is a move to limit the power of Iran and Hezbollah. People forget that Israel lost against Lebanon in that last war. And one of the reasons why was they were getting armaments from Iran and Syria. The other issue, of course, is when you move beyond that, there's a revolution going on in Yemen, and they're very concerned because Yemen backs up to Saudi Arabia, which, as everyone knows, is the greatest oil producer on the planet. And the people there are very unhappy, and I know that this may sound contrary to all those fairy tales that we're all taught as little boys and girls. They don't like the king. The king. How about calling him a dictator? Oh, no, he's a king. Hey, ladies, you want to free Afghanistan, right? I hear all that all the time. You can't drive a car in the kingdom. So you have a revolution going on there that's spilling over. Bahrain is ready to go up in flames. Greece is cooked. You have an unemployment rate of over 25%, just officially, and then youth unemployment over 50%. You see what's going on in Spain. They don't report the millions of indignados that are taking to the streets it's turned back. You know how I talk about, Alex, that the timelines are parallels to the crash of '29, the Great Depression, the currency wars, trade wars, World War, the Panic of '08, the Great Depression / Great Recession, currency wars are going on, the trade wars and world wars, Spain, to just play back into that, it's a replay almost of the 1930s. Just the names and the situations have changed. The people are in Franco-era depression levels. Oh, and then over there in France, yeah, they just got a new president over there. And you read the language in the toilet paper of record, the New York Times, the self-proclaimed paper of record. They have a little story in there about the riots going on in France. And do you know who's rioting? Hey, those people from when they used to, remember those French used to take over Algeria, Morocco, and then all those people came over to France? Yeah, them. And you know who them is? Them are the 50% of the youth unemployment demographic. It's unemployment worldwide. You know my saying. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. They're losing it around the world. The war has begun. I read your website, and I see what you're posting on there about the hollow point bullets. We all know about the National Defense Authorization Act, about all the armaments going into our military police, because now they've both become one with the National Defense Authorization Act and the repeal of the 1878 Passe Comitatus Act that allows the military to take over police duties. So yes, the whole thing is collapsing. And now, of course, we gotta run. Gotta go after Iran. And what are the reports out? I'm not making this up. This is coming out of Israel. They're preparing the people for a 30-day war. What psychopath came up with this idea? 30 days? Oh, you could put a timeline on it, huh? They're nuts. They're out of this. They're out of their minds, and they're taking the people to war. In the meantime, let's go look at some economic data. Oh, China. You know what China's export numbers were last month? How about 1% growth? Virtually nothing. Their imports were only 4%. You look at Brazil, they just announced a $66 billion stimulus program. The real is crashing. The Indian rupee is in the toilet, and they're trying to stop people from buying gold. Oh, and you mentioned that Soros and Paulson are buying up tons of gold. Oh, but they're brilliant. When Celente says it, oh, he's a gloom and doomer. Oh, you can't eat gold. Oh, you can't eat gold? How about shoving this? Oh, no, I have to be clean. This is a chill.
Gerald, speaking of that, let me throw this at you. As you know, the Associated Press reported, because I know you're a news hound, you'll know this, reported yesterday that Chinese government has suspended all purchases of U.S. stocks, saying the system can't be trusted. And just last week, they had articles admitting that the flash trading is such a manipulation, stealing billions a day, that you can't even trust the market. It's totally rigged.
Only an imbecile. Not only an imbecile, only the people that would vote for Romney and Ryan or Biden and Obama are too stupid enough, too blind, and too ideological to admit the entire system is rigged. The last time we're talking about the LIBOR scandal. Oh, what's a LIBOR? Oh, yeah, what's a LIBOR? It only controls all the money that's being created and interest rates. Oh, that's all it is, and it was rigged. And as you pointed out, the high frequency trading. Yeah, the game is rigged. E-trade. How about F-trade? Oh, here's another one.
Hold on, we got to go to break. Gerald Celente, we'll give you his website. When we come back, write it down, get the trends alerts free there on his site, or subscribe. We'll be back. Gerald Celente is our guest. We're going to put his website up on screen for you here in a moment. But here is the hard copy of it. It has Christ whipping the money changers, J.P. Morgan, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, Citigroup, and others on the cover. Going back to Gerald Celente in the short segment, long segment coming up, again, you read your latest issue that just came out a few weeks ago. A couple of articles you've been gracious enough to let us use are in our new free magazine that's coming out. It's all happening. So the long and short of it, what do you expect to happen now that they're scurrying around themselves talking about a very serious collapse? And what do they mean by a banking collapse? What would that look like, Gerald Celente?
Well, what it's going to look like is they're going to call a bank holiday if this thing continues to collapse. And we had wrote about that. We even had a link up of Joe Biden campaigning for John the Slime Corzine. That's right, the former governor of New Jersey and senator of New Jersey, also and former head of the Goldman Sachs gang. Back in 2009, Biden saying, it's there on YouTube, anybody could find it, that when the Obama administration got into office, the first thing the transition team was talking about was calling a bank holiday. And Biden repeats it. That's right, a holiday. It ain't no holiday. You can't get your money. Oh, and by the way, before I go on, speaking of John Corzine, did you see the headline today in the New York Times? You know, the self-proclaimed paper of record, more aptly called the toilet paper of record. No criminal case is likely in loss at Corzine firm. I want to read to you this little bit to show you toilet paper talk. A criminal investigation into the collapse of the brokerage firm MF Global and the disappearance of about $1 billion in customer money. Disappearance? What, did it just evaporate? Oh, no, but I'll go on. Disappearance. That's toilet paper talk so that you think it's legit. Of about one, is now heading into its final stage without charges expected against any top executives. That's right. They'll get some low-level sap, a stooge, to take out. But here's where it gets good. After 10 months of stitching together evidence on the firm's demise, stitching together evidence. Again, more toilet paper talk. On the firm's demise, criminal investigators are concluding that chaos and porous risk controls at the firm, rather than fraud, allowed the money to disappear, according to people involved in the case. Disappear. It just disappeared. $1.6 billion disappeared.
And this sets an incredible... I mean, this sets an incredible new precedent. I'm seeing top money managers getting out of the market entirely, citing this and citing federal cases now, saying no one's money is safe in banks anywhere, as you said last November when the heist first began. That's exactly it. Now, one more thing I want to read out of this. They're talking about the bet he made, a $6.3 billion wager. This is what brought the thing down, MF Global, on European sovereign debt proved fatal. And again, how could any imbecile, this guy's supposed to be so smart, bet on European sovereign debt as the euro crisis is going into the toilet? The size of the bet was enough to wipe out the firm many times over, and as questions about Europe's health grew, a run on MF Global ensued. In the panic, the firm tapped customer money to stay afloat. It didn't tap customer money, it stole customer money out of our segregated accounts, but the toilet paper and the rest of the prostitutes, the CNN, the Cartoon News Network, the ABC clowns, the MSNBC shills, they refuse to go after the big guys because they're prostitutes and they bow down. Gerald, are they not now actually aiding and abetting in the criminality when they call stealing money tapping? So if I rob my neighbors and the cops show up and I've robbed the neighbor, I say I'm just tapping their account. Right, and then money just disappeared out of their house. Hey, that computer you took, all this jewelry you robbed, it disappeared. It disappeared. Or we just tapped it. We didn't steal it. We tapped it, Gerald. We'll be back. We've got the exclusive Dave Mustaine clarification on Obama staging the mass shootings. We have the video. We have the audio. We'll air it after Gerald Celente leaves us, either before our next guest, author, TV host, movie star Richard Belzer joins us, or after. I'm not sure, but this is like in thousands of newspapers right now, and we're going to hit them and hit them hard. So just get ready for that. This won't be Dave up on the stage just saying something offhanded. You'll actually hear him cogent and focused, and I think this will backfire on him, but they are definitely after his First Amendment right now. That is coming up. Now, you can go to trendsresearch.com and find the Trends Journal, or you can also go to trendsjournal.com, takes you to the same place. Invaluable info. A must read. Check it out today. Again, Gerald Celente joins us. I want to go through some of the economic news because, you know, we laugh and joke about this. He had a lot of money, 6 figures plus, stolen from him. We'll leave it at that. Gerald Celente. But it wasn't stolen. It was tapped. First they say in the same article it disappeared, but then it was tapped. You know, it disappeared like into J.P. Morgan's pocket, as he and Max Kaiser said back in October, November. And now it's confirmed J.P. Morgan London got it. HSBC is in mainstream news, running drugs just like Wachovia, Wells Fargo, in the hundreds of billions a year, those guys, running the torture aircraft, running the drug aircraft, stealing people's pension funds, selling into the market stuff that they know is worthless crud, bragging about it. Those emails are out there, but they're just tapping it when they lie to an old lady and sell her fraud with Timberwolf. And now, we said this months before, you said it, we said it. I mean, it's not like we're even that smart. We're just not total idiot, chump, suckers who love being taken for a ride every day. You know, I mean, you rape me 10 or 15 times, I'm not going to trust you anymore. That's why we're extremists, pessimists, poor and bad people. We talked about Zuckerberg and Facebook and the fact that even mainline groups were saying it was overvalued by 10 times at least. Some estimates were 20 times, but it was 10, 15, you know, they're in that area, it varied. And of course, they were allowed to dump up front and then dump later. And they're dumping it. It's totally illegal, but they sent Martha Stewart, and they're trying to get the owner of the Mavericks, who criticized Bush, who didn't engage in insider trading, clearly. They're going after them because, oh, look, we get the bad men. There's the bad man, there's the bad woman, but not the real crooks that make Bernie Madoff and Ken Lay look honest. What do you say about Facebook here, Gerald Celente, and the fact that now the criminality is just parading around and the prostitutes, as you said, are saying the sky's the limit? I mean, I guess that's why judges think they can say no Fourth Amendment now, because the media will cover their evil, wart-covered patoots. I mean, what is the end? Once corruption in history, as you know, reaches this festering point when the pustule pops and just deluges us in the scrofulous stink. Where are we going here? I'm ranting. I'm sorry.
Well, on the Facebook issue, you know, we have Trends in the News as part of the subscription for the Trends Journal. And when the IPO came out, I said, I'm not telling people how to invest. I don't give investment advice. I'm a forecaster. And I'm forecasting that this thing is going to dump out. And I would not put my money in it. And the reason is because it's all, you got to get advertising. And people use Facebook for what it is. Who looks at the advertising? People blast right by it. The other issue, of course, being, it's a fad. It's not a trend. I wrote in Trend Tracking in 1996, what they're calling social networking, I called it techno-tribalism. It has much more richness than just BSing back and forth to people. So we knew it was a bust. Where is it all going? And as we look at, we talked about LIBOR. We're talking about all the criminality going on in all the different levels. You mentioned HSBC. You could go down the list, one fine after another, no one's head rolls, and it just keeps going. The fish rots from the head down. The entire system in the United States, as you look at it, is nothing more than a fish rotting within morality. How about that lovely war over there in Afghanistan? Hey, all you Obamanistas, remember when he had that troop surge? 30,000? Obama. Bravo, bravo. Yeah, what did today, a helicopter got shot down? What, another 7 Americans dead? Oh, yeah, impressive progress, huh? Yeah, sure. Oh, what happened last week? Oh, you know, that transition military that you're putting in place? Yeah, they're killing our soldiers. How many guys got killed? What's a dozen or so? There were no senators' sons. Oh, and let me just digress a little bit. I love the latest episode of the presidential reality show. It was the perfect metaphor for America. Romney and Ryan standing in front of a mothballed battleship. Mothballs? Maybe that's what these guys are carrying around with them. Because it was the perfect metaphor. Two little chicken hawks talking tough with a decommissioned ship that was they stopped battleships before the end of World War II. And they're the tough-talking guys, right? No one's talking about cutting the military. So as we're looking at the fish rotting from the head down, we talked about the military, we talk about the economy. Now, I'm a guy still living in the Bronx and of a different head. And I'd say to my buddy, Joey, listen, we're going to go do a deal. Now, here's what we're going to do. And Joey says, with the other guys, and all of a sudden Joey chirps up, hey, Gerald, come on, that's not honest, man. We're going to rip somebody off like that? I say, what are you, stupid? What's the matter with you? Look at this, stealing at the top. They're robbing us every day. They took your mother's house. She's out on the street. Your father ain't got a job. Your brother died in Iraq. What are you, stupid? They're ripping us off at every level, and you're going to play it straight? All of society is rotting out because it's rotting from the head of Obama. It's rotted from the head of Bush and Cheney. It's rotten like Romney and Ryan. And you know how I say, Alex, I've been saying it for years since you've known me, that these guys that everybody's sucking up and bowing down to are nothing more than the class presidents and head of the student council. And now they followed their career path. It could not be clearer than with Paul, little high school altar boy Ryan. It's great. The altar boy and a guy that wears the magic underwear, the Mormon. It's perfect. It's right out of the presidential reality show. Paul Ryan, voted by his classmates who are smarter than everybody else out there as high school kids, as the brown noser of the year. I'm not making it up. It's there. The class president, a guy that never worked a day in his life, born on third base like Romney and thinks he hits a triple. And people clap like little children. All aboard, next train to Auschwitz. That's where this country's going.
Continue, my brother. You are laying it out. And I mean, where do you see it ending? Where do you see it going if we don't turn this around?
They're going to declare martial law on the people. They're going to go after guys like you and me. They're going to go after everybody that speaks out and calls them out on their crap. What adult could believe this stupid, cheap show? Did you see Obama? When the hell does this guy work? He's been out on a campaign trail every day. Every 4 years, this is where you could find these guys. They'll be at Pete's Barbecue, sitting on a bale of hay. There's Obama in front of a whole bunch of rotted corn. Every 4 years, Freddie's Clam House, sitting there at Maggie's Diner, and the people buy this crap.
Well, wait. For the first time, even businesses that don't like them for the business are telling them you're not welcome here, and they're getting ready to dump Biden, hoping that wakes people back up. Clearly, they've got all the signs on that front. So I do see an awakening happening. But you're right. The level of tyranny we will live under, as Thomas Jefferson said, is the exact amount we'll put up with. So now that they're so cornered like rats, you've said they implode the economy, then they start a war to distract everybody. But do you think that's going to work? I mean, even most of the Israelis don't want a war.
It will work. You know, we sent out a trend alert. We wrote about Ryan in last year, you got it, last summer's Trends Journal, that whole one about direct democracy. And we had a thing, we even had Ryan's weenie mobile. And we showed what a little nobody this guy is, and why would anybody listen to this jerk who never did a damn thing in his life. And I love the term they give, lawmakers. I don't need a lawmaker. Who made that? Would you go to school for lawmaking? Anyway,
well, it's like they're Moses or something. That's where that comes from, the great lawgiver.
Yeah. And so here this guy, we wrote all about him. So we sent out a piece. We also had in that piece, remember that guy, as we wrote about the Wienermobile, we wrote about the other Wiener, Richard Wiener, the guy that got caught, you know, showing his stuff off on TV, on the internet. We wrote about both of them. You should see, this is a year ago, people writing to us, canceling their subscriptions because we said what they didn't like about Ryan. We could go after Obama, they don't care. But you go after their ideologue, and boy, do they get tight. If you don't like their freak, there's something wrong with you. My freak is better than your freak. Oh, the Romney freak is better than the Obama freak. How come you don't like my freak? It's a freak show. How could any adult look at this adolescent act that they call the presidential reality show and buy into it? It's a disgrace.
Well said. Shifting gears to the war front and other areas that deal with that, Syrian rebels, who've always been al-Qaeda-led, warn they will turn to al-Qaeda if the West fails them. And they also say that our troops have to grow the opium or al-Qaeda will get it. I mean, I guess now they'll need your daughters as well, or al-Qaeda will get them. You know, let the globalists have their way with them, or al-Qaeda will pilfer them. Continuing, Israel urges U.S. decision on Iran strike. Ynet News. Here's another one. Israel minister warns of 30-day war with Iran. You mentioned that at the start of the interview. Khomeini, Zionist regime will disappear from map. Israel military blast heard in southern city. Rockets believed to be falling. 7 American soldiers dead in Afghan chopper crash. They never get shot down. It's always a chopper crash. Yeah. Continuing, all of this is going on. And then the economic news, even Fox News runs the headline, the coming economic collapse, and breaks down the numbers. Again, they've always known this because they're imploding it to take over, but the fact that they're now admitting they're getting ready for a collapse, what's your time frame on that? I mean, I know you're in generalities because no one knows exactly, but I mean, we're talking about this fall, next year. Max Kaiser says by next April, because then
it could happen next week. You see, they keep coming up with these schemes. Like, nobody knew about the $26 trillion that the Fed was pumping into the system. Nobody knew that they were rigging the rates and lying about with LIBOR to cover up the damage.
So it's all
to the
rigged.
banks.
It's all rigged, but the real economy is dying.
Yeah, so the timeline is really, really difficult to go on. But here's the, you know, you mentioned about, you know, how the media looks at me. You know, I know people in the media, and they all tell me, you know, and I have friends that, you know, that are agents and different people, and they say, every time they mention my name, they say, no, you know, wait, he scares people what he has to say. You know, we don't want to hear that. You know, he unsettles people. Oh, I don't want to unsettle
Obama. No, but exactly. That's a badge of distinction and honor, a red badge of courage that I've had Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Washington Post, all with reporters here. To the point of now, I go, no, you can't come to a profile. I don't care if your editor said it's allowed to go out. People above that will kill it because they think not recognizing us keeps us down. It's the opposite. If you ever recognize us, it would hurt us. You are like poison, garbage. You're the plague. I'm running from you. And the point is they always call back after they've been here and they go, you're right. They killed it from the corporate above the editors. And I'm like, exactly. So now I say, oh, the editor says you can come to town. I know it's a hit piece. I don't mind a hit piece. That helps me when you attack me. But I said, do this. Have your editor go above the corporate. Just so, and they go, oh my gosh, you're right. I had the Washington Post call me a few weeks ago, you know, this big writer. And I'm like, oh no, anything I've ever done gets published. And I said, okay, go ahead and write your article. He goes, it'll be this Sunday, you watch. Never was in the paper. Because, again, they're scared, and they act like we're the ones destroying confidence. No. The Chinese government won't buy U.S. stocks anymore because they know it's rigged. That's why. We're not the... In fact, I get this a lot. I see this about you, but I get this a lot. I'm causing the problems. I'm the reason there's a loss of confidence. Don't listen to that guy or we'll have a depression. Hey, I got news for you. 4 years ago, we passed the Rubicon by every real economic standard. I've had countless economists on. I've researched it. We were in a depression 4 years ago, okay? Okay, I'm not doing it because I'm right. It's not Gerald's fault that he's right. We're trying to pull this country out of it. I like what Gerald says. Most people I know are trying to leave the country. It's global. You're not leaving, folks. It's going worldwide. I'm staying here. I'm fighting. Go ahead, Gerald. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. You're right on. Here, this is why. Remember that? The prostitutes. The prostitutes. That's all they are. There's not a man among them, barely a man in Congress, nobody in the Senate, certainly nobody in the executive offices. It's a freak show, and look, all right, they're going to have the presidential debates. Did you see the lineup of prostitutes that get to ask them the questions? I mean, come on. One of them's Bob Schieffer. Bob Schieffer. You know Bob Schieffer's last question and the Bush-Kerry debate? I went berserk on it. He goes like this. He goes, you know, the three of us have something in common. We're all married to strong women. And I said, how the hell did you get into this thing? Who gives a damn? That was the last question of the debate.
There are a bunch of preening peacocks on the deck of the Titanic as it's listing. We're getting in lifeboats, and they're telling us we're crazy as people are falling into the icy water. They are. It's like Rome is burning, and they're going to press dinners, preening themselves and throwing out politically correct lines about women. You know, throw a bone or something.
Yeah, and you look at the list of who's asking these questions. I mean, give me a break. Hey, let's get this straight, everybody. This is not a democracy. You got it? You're run by a mob. They like to call themselves Democrats and Republicans.
Stay there. We got to go to break. Gerald Celente, straight ahead. Oh, Dave Mustaine and more. We've got Richard Belzer, movie star, TV star, writer, talking about staged government killings. They blame on other people. Wow. And then the last 10 minutes of the show, we're going to have an exclusive interview I did during the first hour. I ran a tape and went and taped it with Dave because he wanted to talk to me before we went on air a few minutes. That's going to air, and that's a big national story. He'll clarify his statement. In fact, we're going to tweet this out right now at twitter.com/RealAlexJones. Dave Mustaine to clarify. I'm having to write this on air right now. I'm having to multitask like nobody you know, folks. I'm like a cook, dishwasher, waiter, you name it around here. I mean, basically, you've seen the headlines with Dave Mustaine. We're going back to Gerald Celente here in just a moment. Basically, the tweet I'm going to put out is, because I know Chrissy's in there listening, about to send it out. Pretty much all the tweets, I end up writing them, but sometimes I write them, like telling somebody what to tweet out. I'm going to basically, you know what, I'll give her that tweet in a moment. After I can codify my thoughts, I'll do that during the break. I'll just tweet it myself. Shoot. Going back to Gerald Celente. Gerald, thank you so much for the time today. We got 5 minutes left here. I've asked a lot of the questions. What else is front and center on your radar right now that you'd like to tell people about?
Well, the big one, of course, is what's going on in the Middle East. Another one, September 12th is going to be a big day. You asked me the timeline on collapse. That's the day that the German Supreme Court is supposed to rule on whether or not it's constitutional for the German government to be into the mechanisms, they call them, that are dumping all of this, funneling all this money into bail out the troubled countries. And it's also another element of that lawsuit that they'll be deciding. And the German Supreme Court ostensibly is not a politically rigged court like the one we have here. That's what they say. We'll see by their deeds. And the other issue is whether or not the Germans are actually going to lose their sovereignty, as well as the rest of the Europeans, by putting the banking structures completely into Brussels. So, how the Supreme Court of Germany rules on September 12th on whether or not they could continue in these bailout funds and these emergency funds and these bond buying schemes is going to determine the future of the euro. Because if they say, which it is, by the way, unconstitutional, as it is established by the German Constitution to continue like this, Germany's the only one holding it up. That means the whole Eurozone collapses. Number two, again, I am not giving financial advice, just to make this clear. My timeline on gold. Gold today is up about $13 as we speak. Gold has to break above 1670, I believe. It's about 13 now. It has to go about 1670, and then the next hit up to that is 1750. Once it goes over 1750, it's back to the 2000 mark. And it could happen overnight, particularly if the psychopaths start a war with Iran. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and I will say it over and over again. This will begin World War III. The entire Middle East will explode. You know how now that Al-Qaeda is fighting against the Assad regime in Syria and on? They will all unite. Sunni, Shia, Alawite, Christian, they will all unite against Israel. If Israel...
I tell you what, we got to go to break. Richard Belzer's coming up, and stay there. 2 more minutes with you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're now into the third hour. Coming up, we're going to have an exclusive Dave Mustaine statement on the international firestorm that's in hundreds of newspapers and TV stations. Also up at our Twitter account, Real Alex Jones, we've got a link to a photo of the police pulling over a Google car for spying on people illegally. We're going to be going over that some later. Gerald Celente, just a few minutes left with you. Thank you so much. Trendsjournal.com, trendsresearch.com. Finishing up, you were getting into the chain reaction of World War III that could be triggered by unifying the Arabs if there's an attack on Iran. That's why most of the people in the Israeli military know it's not a good idea. You also have the globalists trying to launch a proxy war using Al-Qaeda against Shiites and people in different areas of the Middle East. So the globalists want a civil war, but you're saying an Iran war will bring them together.
Oh, you know, it's that Bedouin saying, that old Bedouin saying, you know, me against my brother and I against our cousin, my brother, my cousin, and I against our neighbor, and all of us against the foreigner. You know, I'm not making this up. This is as old as history. And that's what it will be. It will be and the entire Middle East will go up in flames. It's already going up. Look what's going on over in Egypt. Look at Tunisia. Go over to Morocco. Look at Bahrain. Look at Yemen. Look at Syria. If they explode this, it's in flames. It's only a madman would conceive this. And there are plenty of them out there to conceive it. They're called politicians, presidents, chancellors, all of the rest of them, prime ministers, psychopaths, sociopaths, megalomaniacs. Vote. Don't forget to vote.
What's the time frame, do you think, on an Iran strike? Do you think they're getting closer to that, or is there a way to stop it?
You know, I just did an interview with in the Israeli press. The people there are very concerned. And there's an element in this, and again, you can't put the timeline on. Again, it's all politics, and right now, Netanyahu, over 60% of the people disapprove of him. So they do desperate things because these people, again, they range between psychopath, megalomaniac, sociopath, and nobodies that want to be somebodies. They're all power hungry. So I don't know the timeline. The timeline that's being reported is before November 6th.
All right. Well, Gerald Celente, thank you so much for spending time with us today. It's been invaluable. I wish you weren't right about these things. I wish I wasn't right. But we're here trying to point this out and get some basic sanity. And hopefully sane people will start getting involved. We can take the levers of control away from the madmen. But we have become very decadent like Rome, no doubt. Thank you so much for joining us.
And thank you so much for having me on and for all you do.
Thank you. There goes Gerald Celente. We are going to come back with Richard Belzer. He has written a book that's published by Skyhorse Publishing and has a foreword written by Jesse Ventura. I haven't read it yet, but I look forward to reading it. Dead Wrong, Straight Facts on the Country's Most Controversial Cover-Ups. Oh, staged shootings blamed on patsies. What are we talking about today? What's Dave Mustaine in trouble for right now? So look forward to having Richard Belzer up on the show after this break. And again, we have an exclusive interview with Dave Mustaine with clarifying his statement about Obama being behind the mass shootings. That will be coming up in the last 10 minutes. But for the next 45 minutes or so, when we come back from break, we are going to be joined by a guest exposing very similar things to what Dave Mustaine's talking about, but dealing with the killings of RFK, JFK, MLK, Marilyn Monroe, and others. It's a powerful book, and in hindsight, the evidence of staged events is extremely clear. We'll be right back. I'm Alex Jones. Our websites, where we're streaming live video of the radio show, is prisonplanet.tv. Don't forget the news websites, the leaders out there, Infowars.com and prisonplanet.com. More straight ahead. Well, I'm very excited about this interview, and hopefully it'll be the first of many. We were just talking to him during the break as he was connecting with us being video Skype, and I'm excited to hear that Richard Belzer is a listener of the show, and I count him amongst a lot of the great folks that put up with me. Now, he's written a very powerful book. I've only started reading it. I haven't read much of it because I just got it a week or so ago, and I've been very busy. But I look forward to reading the whole thing. It's been put out by Skyhorse Publishing, the same folks that put out Jesse Ventura's excellent books. And by the way, the afterword is written by Jesse Ventura. Dead wrong, straight facts on the country's most controversial cover-ups. Oh, where the government would shoot and kill and poison people and blame patsies. Oh, what Dave Mustaine is in so much trouble for. We have that in the last 10 minutes today, that exclusive interview I did during the first hour today. We taped it. It's going to go out in about 40 minutes from now. But we are very honored to have Richard Belzer here on the broadcast with us to run through the book today. Good to have you, buddy. What an iconic individual you are. I'm very flattered to have you with us.
Alex, I'm so happy to be on your show. As my family can tell you, I'm a longtime listener, and your research has thrilled and astounded me for years. I mean, you're the real deal, and I love that the InfoWars hook that you have, that because it is information, and I like that you're not encouraging people to take up arms, although we all have the right to bear arms. You're doing great work, Alex. I know you work hard and you're tired and you try to spend time with your family, but you're on a mission, and I understand it. Believe me, I've run into some of the same things that you have run into over the years in terms of censorship and, mysterious things happening. But we're brothers now, Alex, so thank you for having me. Wow,
I am blown away because obviously I've enjoyed so many of your films, the big TV shows that you're doing, including the current one. The website is ibelz.com. Is that the best website?
iBelz, but Alex, if I may, belzersbook.com, because I want people to really, I feel a civic responsibility. I mean, you know Jesse very well, and you know that, both of you guys, I think we're on the same team here. We're disappointed. People say I hate America. I don't hate America. I'm disappointed in the system. And the reason I wrote this book, I've written novels, Alex, and I've written nonfiction books, but they're put in like the, entertainment section or the comedy section. I purposely did this book as a history book. I used to be a newspaper reporter. David Wayne is a scholar. He's a microanalyst of media events. He has studied for decades how the media, and this is right up your alley, Alex, how the media covers events. And I've covered, and his footnote here, this is another reason I admire you. You back it up. I mean, you back up what you say. You have cited things that I thought I only knew, or, like a Freedom of Information Act, or a speech someone gave, or an old magazine article, thank you for kind of fortifying my research. And you blow my mind almost every day, man. And it's just great to be on the show with you.
Oh, Richard, please tell us about your awakening. I'm sure it's been going on for decades, and why you decided to write this book. Obviously, for our listeners, you don't really need any introduction, but this side of you, though, so people understand.
Yeah, sure. Well, when they exploded John Kennedy's head in broad daylight, I was in college, and that kind of woke me up a little bit. I followed that very closely, and then I kind of went dormant. And then when Watergate happened, Alex, the same names popped up that were in the Bay of Pigs, that were involved in the Kennedy murder. You know, the permanent national security state reared its ugly head. And that was around the time I became friendly with Gore Vidal, who is, rest in peace, who is one of the foremost scholars on what happened to this country when Harry Truman in December of 1947 signed the National Security Act and turned us into this paranoid armed state, spending trillions of dollars on borrowed money against an empire in decline, Russia. But the reason I wrote this current book, Alex, is because a lot of people roll their eyes at me sometimes. I'm sure you've seen that. It happens to you when you say the government kills people or the government lies or that there's psy wars or that CNN actually had guys coming over from Fort Detrick telling them how to do the news. And I mean, you're into all this stuff. The reason I wrote this book with David Wayne is because, as an FBI agent who we interviewed said, I have no theories, just facts. And as you know, Alex, better than anyone, we don't have to make anything up. The world is scary and fascinating and wonderful in its own right. It's very complex. Most people in their day-to-day life can't read 20 newspapers. You know, they don't have staff. And I mean, you're performing a civic duty. And because I'm an actor, I have a lot of downtime. I've been taking notes for years. And then Skyhorse called me about David Wayne wanting to work with me. And it was, you know, this, and this is not hyperbole, Alex. This book is, at the risk of being immodest, I'm more proud of this than, I mean, I'm an actor, I'm a comedian, and I'm certainly proud of that. But this book means more to me than I think anything right now during this moment in history, the zeitgeist. And because I'm famous, I can put this book out and people will read it that wouldn't read it if my name wasn't on it. So, you know, I'm using my celebrity to make the electorate informed so they can know how, you know, I mean, they know, but I mean, to get the spineless Congress who has a 10% approval rating, you know, Jefferson's idea was that the people, the pyramid has been inverted. Jefferson's idea is that you rule from the bottom up, but somehow the elites have switched it. And the people's voice is gone. You know, as you know, Alex, in the early days, senators, it was a gentlemanly thing. You know, they go back to their homes and they'd come. I mean, it was, even though they were slave owners and, you know, they had some, you know, Jefferson was a genius. And thank God Jefferson came back from France when they were writing the Constitution, because he was inspired by the French Revolution. And when he came back, he said, there's no Bill of Rights. What about people's property? What about the right to bear arms? What about, so, you know, Jefferson saved this country in a way because Madison and Hamilton thought that people, you know, have to be controlled, and they were very patronizing. And Jefferson, he wasn't elitist, but he understood, you know, I mean, Jeffersonian democracy is a real brilliant, as you know, concept.
He believed in the beautiful power of the yeoman farmer and their families, the people in the dirt, people that really worked for a living. He believed in the general knowledge of the crowd and really disdained the corrupt type of European, arrogant, disconnected elites. And he said the Western elites should learn from the people at the grassroots.
Exactly right. He was a farmer. He was a transcendentalist. He rewrote the Bible and took out all the miracles, because it is, you know, it's a great, inspiring work. I mean, he was a fascinating guy, and it's ironic that, you know, in the Constitution it says all men are created equal, except, you know, Indians are savages and blacks are 2/3 of a person and women can't own property or vote. But ironically, Alex, his term, freedom, and has been used by blacks, women, and gays. You know, all men are created equal. That came back kind of not to haunt Jefferson, but that term has been used by all these groups, and rightfully so. If I just may say one more quick thing before I get into my book. When Jefferson said, when they wrote The Pursuit of Happiness, that was not a light concept. And the government and the commons, and, you know, we're supposed to share responsibility and share the lands. And I mean, we can develop the land, but certainly there has to be land that everyone can share, like public parks and stuff. But the whole concept of Jeffersonian democracy is that it's not the Hobbesian thing of every man for himself. And he had to fight for that. So anyway, my book is straight facts. And I must say that I thought I knew a lot about these subjects, but David Wayne really took me to school. And I was so flattered that Jesse wrote the afterword because I'm a big fan of his books and his writing. The thing that's scary about this book, Alex, is I've done a few interviews already, and no one can punch holes in it. And that's why I wrote it, because I'm a comedian, I'm an actor. They can try to marginalize me and call me, you know, the Jew liberal from New York, or, you know, whatever they want to call me. I don't care. My role is to use my celebrity to tell people that not only does the government have its eyes on you, they're looking at you through a telescopic sight. And, you know, you're very much into the technology, like this computer we're on now. Even when it's off, they know where we are. You know, phones. I'm with my friend Chris Walken. We're doing a cooking thing for Funny or Die. And Chris's house, he doesn't have a computer or a cell phone. So dig it, Alex. He's not on any of Google's maps. Isn't that interesting?
Wow. Well, you know, I've tried to do that now at...
we can't. You and I can't. We're finished. I mean, we're public now.
Well, that's amazing. I want to get into the book some, because this...
I'm sorry, I'm ranting.
No. Are you kidding? I want to have you back next week for 2 hours if you got the time, sir. We're just flattered to have you here. And, I mean, all the points you're bringing up just bring up so many others that I'd like to interject, but I'm the king of interrupting, so I'm kind of just sitting here and shutting up. No, you don't want to invite me to interrupt, Richard. If you do that, it's all over. But continuing here, we're about to go to break. When we come back, I want to look some at the book, because this is a coup d'etat against people and thinkers and ideas that were threatening the power structure. I mean, they assassinated a bunch of people, did it in broad daylight, and tried to cover it up, but they left their tracks. So looking at this, looking at your book, is a roadmap to understand our present and our future. So I want to get into the book that I can't wait to read. In fact, I got it a week and a half ago. I've been trying to read it. Because, you know, you think you know all this stuff, folks. I started reading it. It reminded me of stuff I'd forgotten, but a lot of stuff I didn't know, and I was looking it up. It's Richard Belzer's new book, Dead Wrong, Straight Facts on the Country's Most Controversial Cover-Ups, available in bookstores everywhere and at InfoWarsShop.com, and also at his websites. We'll give you when we come back. Stay with us. Well, I feel like I should say more cowbell here right now. We have Richard on the line with us. He's the author of Dead Wrong, Richard Belzer, you know, TV, movie star, you name it, author, comedian. And then he said, yeah, no, I'm here at Christopher Walken's house. And he was talking about how he didn't have a bunch of computers and phones spying on him. And suddenly, Christopher Walken is on our Skype video feed. Let's bring him up right now. Oh, my.
I had to drag him out of bed. That's how much he likes me.
Richard and I are cooking.
Yes.
And we're writing a book.
Right. And we're doing a movie called
The Nose
of the River. We're teasing, but we're filming this cooking thing for Funny or Die. So Chris took a picture of my nose, and I took a picture of his nose, and we're going to release that as a short film, and hopefully get an Oscar.
You took a snapshot of my nose, but I took a movie.
A 4-second movie of my nose.
It's going to be great.
People want to know what celebrities do, Alex. We're not that mysterious.
But we also made a chicken.
We made chicken. We made what else?
Sweet potatoes.
He made chicken with sweet potatoes, onion,
cooked
pears,
and the orange seafood melange.
He's a great cook, and I just made the salad.
The orange melange.
Brujol. The orange melange. What's the name of that dish that you made? The French name.
The seafood.
The orange.
The scallop orange melange.
A la Walken.
Yes.
Alex, you ever come to New York?
I do come occasionally. Why?
Please call us when you come to town.
But Richard made a terrific arugula salad with brajol.
Brajola, heirloom tomatoes, shaved Parmesan. 2 kinds of oil, sunflower and olive oil, and a little salt.
And we had a little red wine.
That sounds good.
Yeah, Chris is a gourmet.
What's your favorite type of red wine, Mr. Walken?
French.
I hear you.
We like the heavy reds.
Oh, wow. Mr. Walken, we are learning Mr. Belzer's views on the world.
Richard and Chris.
Chris, what is your view on what's happening in the world right now with the TSA and the groping and the surveillance grid? I was hearing that you don't have all the little spy gadgets in your house. I envy that.
I have no idea, and I hardly leave the house.
Chris does not.
I cook.
Read the news.
Richard just gave me his book. I'm going to read it.
Yeah, he'll read my book, thank God.
It's right here.
It's a history book. But Chris is...
but I'm working with Richard on the cooking book. To me, that's...
Right, we're going to do something together. But Chris is brilliant because he doesn't want to be on the Google map, and he doesn't want his phone to have that reverse technology that we all know. Even when it's off, they know where we are. And he's one of the few people I know on the earth that has managed to do that. I mean, we have to do it. We're in media, but... You know, he can go to a movie set. They give him a phone that he can throw away when it's over, when he does a play. It's the coolest. I mean...
they only give me the phone so that they can know
where he is. But
showing away my radio/TV show, we're almost invading you right now like an alien probe.
I know. I was taking a nap, and Richard called me out, and here I am.
This is unbelievable. But Mr. Walken, what do you think of the whole announcement of that they want to have an Iran war? Do you think that's a bad idea?
I don't know anything about that. He's got a nap, Alex.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Walken.
All right, thanks.
All right, I'm sorry, Richard, that I brought up serious subjects.
No.
Call him back. Let's ask him his favorite recipe with truffles. Ask him that.
What's your favorite recipe? Well, he made a great chicken. Who? Tell him how you made it.
What's your favorite truffles recipe, Chris?
Truffles.
I like truffles on pasta.
There you go.
Me too. With some shallots, and you like shallots on the pasta, sir?
Absolutely. Olive oil, garlic,
and then a nice French red.
Yes, of course.
What's your favorite French red?
He's gone.
Oh, he's gone. Okay.
Yeah.
I can tell he wanted to talk about food. He didn't want to talk about the New World Order.
No, he's a foodaholic, and I'm the one that is into all this stuff. And like like during the Reagan administration, I tried to explain to him certain things about trickle down economics and how they were raping the government. And he would say, "Isn't it always been like that?" And so what am I going to say?
Well, hey, tell us about this food show. When is that coming up?
Oh, that's just the bit we're doing for Funny or Die, where he and I go shopping in his favorite market here in Connecticut, and then we go to his house and we cook and then we eat it. But we're talking about film and our lives and, feeding my dog. My son-in-law is playing the banjo. Come here, Timbo. My son-in-law is a great musician who I'll send you his album. He's a country western, but he's like...
Hey, well, hold on. Richard Belzer is our guest. He's got a new book out. That was a short segment. Long 18-minute segment coming up right now. Hopefully the first of many visits. I mean, I didn't know that we would have more cowbell, and I've been wearing this watch, where for quite a while joining us. I'm blown away right now. Dead Wrong. Get the book everywhere. Get it everywhere because it exposes the loving murderers that run things. This is dedicated to the fellow that just popped in with Richard Belzer. Right now, I'm just reeling in a good way from Christopher Walken suddenly popping into my Skype video. I think we've now reached the weirdest moment in InfoWars history. Amazing. Richard Belzer with David Wayne, afterward by Jesse Ventura, Dead Wrong. Did you say there's another website, belzerbook.com? Is that right?
Belzersbook.com.
Belzersbook.com. Belzersbook.com.
Or iBells, which is my website.
Absolutely, and we sell it at InfoWarsShop.com.
I really appreciate that, Alex.
Oh, you got to be kidding, man. I mean, we're all in this together, and I want this book to be #1. It is. Listen, I want to get into the book here, but as we went to break, you were dragging in your...
He's playing mandolin now for the show, but I'll get him in before I leave.
Okay, good. But let's get... And by the way, you've promised to come back on for a full hour next week because we're cutting you 10 minutes short because of this giant imploding story with what's happening with the Second Amendment and all the rest of it, and Dave Mustaine. But
I want to talk to you about that stuff. I think we're on the same team.
Well, yeah. Well, let's talk about that and then the book, because your book is
let's talk about the book right now.
Yeah, let's do it.
But next week, you got me for an hour, any week, any time.
Well, let's talk about the book right now. Tell us about it.
Well, as I said before, I'm cashing in on my celebrity for unselfish reasons, I hope. I used to be a newspaper reporter. I've taught school. I've had all kinds of jobs. And my father, when I was born, we were in the ghetto, what you call a government project. We literally were on the wrong side of the tracks. The train went by our building. And then my dad borrowed money from my mom's father and started a little business. And then we moved to a 3-family house. Then we bought a ranch house. So it's like I've lived the American dream without kind of being able to articulate it. And now that I'm older, I really love this country. I really, I know a lot of people in Washington. I know a lot of, I can't drop names, but believe me, Alex, I know some really heavy people, some people who are a part of the dark force. And I just feel that you and me and Jesse, and this is like, we're the Paul Reveres of the internet. I mean, we have to alert people. I know they're busy and they're obsessed with maybe getting thrown out of their house, and the banksters, as you call them, which I love. Did you ever see the documentary War, Alex?
Well, expand on that briefly.
There's a documentary by an English documentary that is one of the most amazing things, and it's like, I think it's only a year or two old. You just go on YouTube and put in War, one word, full movie.
Sure. Well, I know what psychological warfare is. I think I've heard of that movie. Tell me about it.
This movie talks about the invention of public relations in 1914 when the Rockefellers...
Oh, yeah, Edward Bernays.
Yeah. Well, they talk about him, and they talk about how he and his minions figured out that propaganda can be used to sell products. And Bernays was Freud's nephew. So he used psychological insight to manipulate humanity because he, like a lot of elites, looked down upon us. They look down upon the people. They think that we need to be controlled. And it's disgusting, but mark that, have your people mark that down. That's a must for you, man. I'm telling you, you're going to go crazy. The footage is astounding. There's a guy at the BBC who they gave permission to go into their archives and do anything he wanted. But and he found the most amazing footage. Anyway, the reason I'm going on about it is because it's right up our alley, and at this timing now, the zeitgeist, I think, I agree with you that we're finally, I say that George Orwell was kind of wrong because 1984 goes both ways. They can see us, but we can see them now. And the government's really worried about, as you know, they're trying to screw around with the internet. So my book, the style that it's written in is I'm very cognizant that people have no time. So it's very punchy. It's like a murder mystery, but you can't put it down. I have all the greatest footnotes, thanks to my partner, and timelines, FBI agents, forensic evidence, scholars, scientists. It's irrefutable.
It is irrefutable. The police report with the RFK deal, I mean, this is why I've tried to shut up here, is they held his arm down. He didn't shoot him. They knew it was a different caliber. We know who shot him, and it's the same in every case. They're so ham-fisted because they controlled the media then. They could do anything they wanted. So, listen, this weekend, I've got Saturday and part of Sunday off. I'm not just saying this to hype it up. There's going to be something I'm sitting down with while my kids sit there and play board games, and it's going to be dead wrong because, again, as I said, I started reading just the first chapter. It is very well written and incredibly researched. Everybody has got to read Dead Wrong.
Thank you, Alex. It's going to blow your mind, and I don't use that term lightly. The reaction to the book has fortunately been quite amazing, and I think with your help, we can build on this momentum and get. And David Wayne and I are writing another book called Hit List about all the people that died after Kennedy's murder. So we're gonna keep doing books. But the style of this book it's incredible. I'm not I have to sell it, but it really is very readable. And I've read it a lot, obviously. But the way it's laid out, as you know, Alex, we just show the official verdict, the actual circumstances, then inconsistencies, and then we break it down. And it was really uncanny because David Wayne and I, we have a similar writing style. So it was like the gods smiled on us or something when we talk on the phone or he emails me, his sense of humor, his writing style.
No, you guys clicked. I mean, people that are into truth and liberty and freedom, it just clicks.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And he was quoting one of my quotes from a book before he ever met me, that he was signing off all his letters with my quote, which was, 90% of the people in the United States believe that John Kennedy was killed by a conspiracy. The other 10% work for the government or the media.
No. I mean,
it's no joke, but you know.
No. But you're absolutely right. I've done an index of polls. Over 90%. Over 90, usually about 91, 92, in scientific polls, don't believe it. And then the tiny media elite in government, 8% points at us from their Byzantine hill and tell us we're freaks because we live in reality.
Yeah, well, you know what, Alex? I am sick of that. And I told I did a bunch of radio interviews today, local stuff. And I have no tolerance now for marginalizing this information, and that's why I feel the book is so bulletproof, because no one can refute anything in the book, and I'm so proud of that, and it took us a long time, but that's why I'm going around ranting like I am, and because it's, your term InfoWars, I mean, it's so important, and the book, Marilyn Monroe, for instance, I think we have 59 pages on her. A lot of people don't know the details of that. It's fascinating what was going on in her life. She didn't commit suicide. She was murdered. The first cop on the scene who we interviewed said, as soon as he walked in the door, he said, staged murder. Like the cops on the scene, that's who we talked to. Forensics, guys that were told to lie about Marilyn's death, guys that were told to lie about, Thane Caesar, right? I mean, Bobby Kennedy had powder burns on his hair. Sirhan was 10 feet away with Rosie Greer and George Plimpton grabbing his arm. He had an 8-shot pistol. There were 14 bullets in that pantry, as you know. And none of, the bullet in Bobby wasn't the same as Sirhan. And Sirhan, I don't know if you know this, Al, but Sirhan was a hypnotic subject, which but someone found in hypnosis and in the CIA, they call it the key. You can get a hypnotic subject to reveal what happened to them. Usually they're programmed to forget. They commit a crime and then they're touched or whatever and they forget. But there's a tape of a guy breaking down Sirhan, and it's absolutely chilling. And but this book is just, like Dr. King was clear. James Earl Ray never fired a shot. The only reason he pleaded guilty was so they wouldn't fry him. Dr. King's family believes him that he wasn't guilty. As you know, that famous photo where they're pointing at the shooter, James Earl Ray was at the same level as the balcony. So it wasn't a straight shot. It was, in a downward angle.
But plus now with JFK, he was photographed at the scene. I've talked to his son. Well, I mean, now I'm shifting gears to what happened in Dealey Plaza. I mean, I'm jumping around here, but it's all in the book. But I mean, I've interviewed E. Howard Hunt's son, who premiered video and audio here and on Coast to Coast AM, where he was admitting to it. In fact, he sued a newspaper when they said he was involved, and he lost back in the 80s. I mean, this is incredible. We even have the people that were famous black op killers admitting that they were there running the hit of JFK.
Yeah, that's true. And, he had an ear surgery, Hunt.
Yeah.
His ears stood out so much. He may have been one of the tramps, or he was definitely there. And then what happened, Alex, was he was on his deathbed. He thought he was dying, and he wrote this chart that you saw when you interviewed the son, breaking down the hierarchy and the cabal that murdered Kennedy. And then he rallied and didn't die. That's when he started suing, because he told the truth to his son. Then he didn't die, so he had to cover that up. The trial you're talking about was with, who was that guy that wrote the first book about the murder? God damn it. Anyway.
Oh, there have been so many. I mean, that's the problem, is that we're literally in a sea of evidence. I mean, I interrupted you when you were on the...
no, it's cool.
The killing of Martin Luther King. I mean, it's all so incredibly transparent.
Yeah, and we know, I now can state unequivocally that it was physically impossible for Oswald to have fired a weapon that day. He was having lunch on the first floor. He was seen by a pregnant woman 8 minutes or 7 minutes before the murder. She remembers it because she had to go to the bathroom every 20 or 30 minutes. Two black gentlemen who worked at the depository said they saw him. And Lee Harvey Oswald, when he was, the very few notes that we have of his interview, he mentioned that, oh yeah, Junior, he named the two black guys. He couldn't, so the odds of him guessing who was there. Then he goes to the second floor, and, you know, as we know, got a Coke. And see, Officer Marion Barry, Officer, the motorcycle patrolman who ran up the stairs with Roy Truly, the manager of the building, he's a combat guy. He was on a motorcycle. He heard a shot. He knew it came from above. He got off his bike. He ran into the depository so fast that he bumped into Roy Truly, who was running up the stairs, and Truly brought him up, ran up the stairs, saw Oswald through these doors on the second floor, calmly drinking a Coke. Now, Alex, they say that Oswald fired 3 shots with a Mannlicher Carcano rifle, which is a joke rifle, with a misaligned scope in 6 seconds. As you know, and Jesse proved this, when you sight a bolt-action rifle, you have to drop it to pull the bolt and then re-sight. There was a tree in the way of the limousine. No shooter ever shoots anybody going away. The first shot missed. That was the warning.
But like you said, they write all these 8,000-page debunker books. They could have 20 chimpanzees in a room typing. It's all, I mean, hundreds of witnesses, hundreds saw the smoke and shooting and guys with rifles, and then the hundreds of deaths and people being killed and his head blowing up and the photos and the brain disappearing. And I interviewed the head of the funeral home when the feds came in to put the ink on Oswald's hand and put it on there. And then he was coming back to do another interview, and guys ran him off the road at 90-something years old, and, well, he couldn't do the interview.
Yeah, I know that story. And, you know, they found fingerprints on those boxes in the so-called sniper's nest. None of them are Oswald's. And, Alex, this is going to blow your mind if you don't know it already. Guess there's in the 70s, a very diligent reporter was thumbing through Dallas police files, found fingerprints. Mac Wallace, Lyndon Johnson's hitman, who we know and proven in court through testimony, it was a murderer. His fingerprints were on the box in the 6th floor. I don't know what that means, but I don't think Johnson ordered it. I think he was told, but we'll talk about that when we have more time, the details of that. But, you know, Mac Wallace's prints are on the box. I think that was staged. They said Oswald never fired a shot. So let me just quickly say this, Alex. I was in Dallas. I went to the museum. They allowed me to, see the stairs, and they don't let you go up to that window, but I was close enough to see. And here's what's so bizarre. And this guy Posner wrote the book Case Closed. With his false scholarship, who ran away from me, by the way. You'd love this. I was doing the Today Show. Actually, Jesse Ventura was on the same day, Alex, 1999. My book came out. It was called UFOs, JFK, and Elvis, Conspiracies You Don't Have to Be Crazy to Believe. I'll send it to you if you don't have it. And by coincidence, now that I think of it, Jesse was on that show, and Posner was on, but we're all separate segments. And I couldn't wait to get my hands on Posner for lying and just forget about it. It's criminal what he's done. But he ran out. They said, oh, he ran out of here. He heard you were here. And then Jesse goes on with Matt Lauer and says, I agree with Richard Belzer about this. So that was like 99. Anyway, I'm rambling, but so let me just go through this because this is key. I read a lot of the Warren Commission report, and they reenacted what happened. And they had the Officer Officer Marion, excuse me, his last name, Patrolman Marion, reenact it, but they slowed him down, Alex. They made him do it slower than he actually did it. So keep this in mind. Then they had an FBI guy play Oswald, and they say that Oswald fired the shots, ran in a straight line across the 6th floor, and wedged the rifle behind a stack of books. Okay, right there. It wasn't a straight line, because there were books that he would have had to zigzag. We're talking about seconds that it would take. And then he supposedly jams the rifle behind the stack of books, then goes down 4 flights. It's really 8 short flights with landings. You know how some staircases have landings?
Sure.
So 8 short flights. The door to those stairs is really heavy. So, I mean, I'm not the strongest guy in the world, but any person would take a few seconds to open the door, even, Arnold Schwarzenegger, asshole, whatever. So open the door. and then go down the 4 flights or 8, go to the Coke machine, open it, and start sipping it. They said he did that all in 90 or 95 seconds. Now, according to the reenactment, but in reality, it would have to have been 60 seconds, 58 to 65 seconds. Therefore, physically impossible, even if he did fire a shot from that window, which he didn't, it would be physically impossible for him to have gotten down the stairs, not be out of breath, open a Coke, open that heavy door, jam the rifle behind there, dodge all these stacks of books. I mean, what pisses me off, Alex, pardon my French, the utter contempt that the elites have for us.
Richard Belzer, this has been one of the most amazing interviews ever, not just your info, but Christopher Walken popping in. Promise me you'll come on next Monday or Tuesday for an hour and a half. We're going to set it up right now. Thank you so much. The book is dead wrong. We've just scratched the surface. Next time he joins us, I would have read the whole book. We're going to see you next Monday or Tuesday, okay?
All right, thank you, my friend. I appreciate it.
No, you're awesome. Stay there. I want to talk to you here in just a moment.
All right, stay safe.
Oh, I'll try, brother. You too. And say hi to Christopher Walken again for me and the rest of your crew there. Listen, here's the Dave Mustaine interview I taped during the first hour of the show today, okay? This is Dave Mustaine, his official response to the international firestorm over him saying, hey, they staged Fast and Furious, they could have staged some of the other shootings, which had all the evidence of other shooters. The media is ignoring that. We're going to put together a whole article breaking it down, but here's what Dave Mustaine had to say. Here is his response, premiering here on the syndicated radio transmission. Even if you don't agree with Dave, I agree with him. You've got to admire his courage, just like the courage of our last guest here, because we know the system lies to us. We'd be idiots to trust everything they have to say. Here is his response. And joining us on the phone line is the founder of Megadeth, Dave Mustaine. He wants to clarify and respond to the huge international story that has broken in the last 24 hours concerning his comments taken out of context at an overseas concert concerning the tragic shootings in the last month here in the United States. Dave, thanks for being with us.
You're welcome, Alex. It's good to be with you.
Dave, they are certainly attacking the First Amendment and trying to basically twist what you've said from a concert. What did you really mean by what you said, Dave?
Well, look, first off, it's good to be with you, Alex. And to clarify things, no one can deny that there were criminal rogues in the administration, and CBS News got the memos, Congress has the information, and basically Larry Pratt, the head of Gun Owners of America, who's a highly respected person, said that if they would stage Fast and Furious, they'd be capable of staging anything, and it was all done to blame the Second Amendment. We'd be fools not to look at this. Our U.S. Border Patrol agents were killed, and like I said, I was just quoting Larry Pratt. That's it, bottom line.
I wonder why they're not attacking Larry. He's been in the news. He's been on my show, but he's been in major newspapers saying, look, thousands died in Mexico, hundreds in the U.S., Border Patrol agents, police officers, and as you said, you've done your homework. CBS News months ago got the memos where they said they were going to blame the Second Amendment. So I think you're clarifying, though, with that criminal rogue statement that you're saying we don't know Obama. When we say Obama, we mean the administration. I mean, clearly, people in the administration, and they won't release the rest of the documents they're covering up, they did do this. They did stage a false flag. So is that what you're clarifying, that you're saying somebody in the administration could have been behind this?
Right. When you're in the heat of the moment, when you're on stage and you're talking, sometimes you're not as eloquent as you'd like to be, but like I said, I was just quoting what Larry said, and we really need to investigate this, and we need to have the Attorney General release the documents and find out who's responsible for this. People died, and the democratic process is let's investigate, let's find out what's going on here. I love our country, and I respect. And my whole thing with this is that I think we should just look into it.
Well, I'm going to air this here on the radio, Dave, and I'm going to add to it the fact that a bunch of Democratic strategists have said on Hardball, but also in memos, that a mass shooting would help them, quote, reconnect with the public. And we were talking just last week on the phone when you were overseas with me. We were talking about The fact that the witnesses, the president of the Sikh group, said they were being cased by multiple men. Multiple witnesses reported up to 4 shooters. I mean, we'd be crazy not to question the fact that with the Batman tragedy and the Sikh tragedy, it doesn't add up.
Yeah, there's some questions here. You know, I just think that we deserve to know the truth. That's it.
Well, you have a lot of courage. That's why they took this video, you up there in the heat of the moment on the stage, tongue-in-cheek, and tried to twist it. They want to attack the First Amendment and shut us up so we don't look at Fast and Furious. Dave Mustaine of Megadeth, any other points you'd like to add?
No, just, you know, I'm a patriot. I love our country. You know, I've always been controversial. I'm a political songwriter, and this wasn't done to hurt any of my fellow countrymen. You know, I think that it's something we really, really need to look into.
Well said. And again, national media, you want to attack Dave Mustaine? This is going to backfire on you. Here's a clip of Larry Pratt on my show weeks ago saying what Dave Mustaine said. But he's got millions and millions of supporters in the Second Amendment community. He's a Fox News contributing guest. They're scared to go after Larry Pratt. I think this is going to blow up in their face. Here's a clip of Larry Pratt. What does your gut tell you, and now a week later in the aftermath, what is the intel you've got on this shooting in Colorado? Am I wrong for being suspicious?
I don't think you're wrong. I would have disagreed with you before Fast and Furious because I never in my wildest fears would have thought that our government would actually premeditatedly kill some 400 Mexicans have been murdered and a couple of our U.S. agents. So after we caught them planning premeditatedly for a program that would get people murdered, one of the whistleblowers submitted a report on weekly briefings at ATF. And when the head of the ATF at the time would be given the increase in body counts in Mexico, he would say things like, good, the program's working. Well, so this was no mistake. This was not a sting operation gone bad. This was premeditated murder. Well, if our government would do that, then even though I think the evil of the human heart is sufficient to account for somebody that wants to go and shoot people at random, we've had, since we've been keeping records in this country, this has happened every few years since the 1870s. 10, 20, 30 people being murdered at a time. By the way, long before semi-automatics were available to people. So this is what human beings are capable of. And now we have to admit that maybe this is something that our government is capable of, because this is only 12 people murdered. They were good for 400 in Fast and Furious. Wow.
My friends, we need to support gun owners of America for their courage. We need to support Dave Mustaine and Megadeth for his courage. We need to spread the word about what they're doing. There's going to be a big orchestrated backlash of political correctness because they know people are waking up to try to shut down free speech. So support Megadeth, just like people supported Chick-fil-A. Buy their great new record 13. Go to their website and financially get behind them. Even if you don't agree with these statements completely, agree with the First Amendment. Even if you didn't agree with the Dixie Chicks, they shouldn't have been persecuted for saying the Iraq War was wrong. We need to support the First Amendment and stop these witch hunts. Dave Mustaine, I admire you because you've got guts, and guts is enough. All right, folks, that's it. Dave Mustaine, Christopher Walken, and many others like Richard Belzer on the show today. Great job to the crew.